Well, I just returned from Singapore, which may be fuel for a lot of talks because it was an amazing trip. But one of the first things that I experienced that I want to share about was how it was to be a monastic in a country that is used to Buddhism, and what the effect has been on my mind, and how I think that might affect my practice. Most of the people, I believe, most of the people that we were in contact with in Singapore were from the Chinese background. And so if they did grow up in temples, they mostly grew up in Chinese temples. And so, you know, I went with Venerable Children. She was the teacher. I went as her sort of attendant and helper. I had no expectations of doing anything but being attendant and helper. But from the very beginning, as people just saw the robes, they would bow very deeply, or almost immediately people would run to get a little red envelope and tuck an offering in that envelope and make an offering not just to Venerable, but to me. So that was okay. And then after the first talk, or maybe it was the second one, as people were coming up to make wanting to spend time with Venerable, they would also come up to me and make an offering, and then they would say they'd like to prostrate. Okay, I said. And so it was an immediate kind of response inside myself to simply do what I'd seen my teacher do many times, and that is to simply bow and, close my eyes, and knowing that they weren't prostrating to me. They didn't know any me. It was completely not personal, not at all. It was totally about their respect for the robes and their faith in the Dharma. And so this happened again and again and again and again and again and again. The effect that it had on me was immediate. It was because I knew it wasn't personal. I couldn't in any way think positively or negatively. I couldn't put myself down and say, oh, I'm not worth this. I couldn't puff myself up and say, oh, I'm really great. It wasn't about me at all. But what it inspired in me was a commitment or a wish to fulfill their expectation. It wasn't, may I be worthy of these robes, which I can get myself into. It wasn't even that. It was just, the situation is such that they have faith in the Dharma. I am a representative because of the way I am dressing, and I'm dressing because I've taken these vows. Therefore, I will fulfill their expectation. Venerable Children often talks about how Lama Yeshe said, what kind of visualization are you giving to the lay people? So it was that, like, what kind of visualization am I doing? So I was very aware, how is my posture? How am I standing? What's the tone of my voice? I was just, not in a self-conscious, difficult way, but very just aware that I had a responsibility and a desire to respond in that way. So what that made me think about a lot, so that was one thing. And for a Western monastic, that was a great education. But the thing it reminded me of was that many years ago I worked in a multicultural theater that was committed to producing playwrights whose voices were not really hers. So it was playwrights of color and women and gays and whatever. So we had lots of diversity training at this theater that I worked in. And one of the games that we played in our diversity training was one that people, I think, regularly do, where the facilitator handed out labels to each person, and then they stuck the label on your back. So there was the troublemaker, the leader, the crybaby, labels like that, and we were to relate to each other according to our label, but you didn't know what your label was. And within, it was a 10-minute exercise maybe, everybody began to perform to their label, directly because of the way they were being treated by the people around them. It was phenomenal to see how just because people treated me as the crybaby, that, you sort of got whiny. I didn't know that was my label. So then we came home and saw this wonderful documentary called A Class Divided about how this third grade teacher in Iowa tried this experiment with her students shortly after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968, so that they could get a sense of what discrimination is about. So labeling one day the blue-eyed people were the superior ones, and watching what happened to the brown-eyed children and the blue-eyed children in response to that. The next day labeling the brown-eyed children as superior. So it's interesting that these three things happen simultaneously, because where it has led me in my practice is what happens if I regard every being as though they have the Buddha nature. You know, we are taught again and again that part of what helps us see living beings as lovable is to see their kindness and to recognize their potential. So just based on how much it affected me to be seen as a monastic of the Buddha's Sangha, it has really inspired me to try to hold every single being that I see in that same regard of seeing their potential as Buddhas. And if I see everybody as a Buddha, I mean, maybe it affects their behavior, but it sure affects my mind as well. And just based on my own experience, I also know that as we hold each other as Buddhas, then we rise to our potential. And I'm sure that's what our teachers are doing when they see the potential in us, and I feel pushed, or, oh, they're asking a lot, or, you know, they're asking more than I'm capable of. No. They're actually looking at us in that same way and seeing our potential. So that's my commitment to the community and my commitment to the people I come in contact with, to really cultivate this view. I think it would transform my capacity to develop bodhicitta, and I really think it would transform our community life, even if just one person does it. So I'm going to do it, and I don't know, people can try it at home and see how it works with your families. I think it would be very interesting. So that's my experience today.